Yes, sir.
Well, I guess that's me. Mr. Moy, thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting. I'm curious, though, with the result of yesterday's election, do you see more or less gridlock in Congress now that the Republicans have pretty much taken over Congress? 2 years is a long time, and do you see, with your experience, the ability of this Congress to get along with the president and actually do something for the first time in 8 years, maybe? Do you see changes with the Congress? Because whether it's economic or other policies that they're negotiating, is this a good thing? From your perspective, do you think this is a good result yesterday?
Yes. So it's a very interesting question, and the way that I would answer it is I think there's more potential right now for compromise and progress to be made. And the next 6 to 9 months will be extremely telling as to whether or not the next 2 years are going to be productive. The way I have seen all the election results, and I was up till 2 in the morning last night enjoying, I just love this stuff, so I was analyzing all that. And what it seems to me is that this election, when you take a look at all the incumbents that were thrown out, which just happened to be, there were more Democratic incumbents than Republican incumbents, and yes, Republicans may have ran better candidates or had better campaigns, and there might be an anti-Obama sentiment, but long story short, is there a lot of incumbents were thrown out, and that's because I believe the American people have said, we're fed up. You guys aren't getting anything done, and if we elect the same people, we're gonna end up with the same result. And so we're so frustrated, we're going to throw the bums out, put in new people, and give them a chance. And so with that, especially with Senator McConnell's remarks last night at his victory party, is that he said, the American people elected us to get something done. And if we don't elect something done, they're going to vote us out in 2 years. And so we have a limited period of time to show the American people that we can put some points on the board that will move our country forward. And so I think there's a number of small things that both parties can agree to and the president can sign off on that will be goodwill gestures that we'll see in the initial Congress, and that will then, if you're successful, that will escalate into more bipartisanship. But if it then, basically, I believe in this and won't change, and I believe in this and won't change, nothing happens, then you're going to have another throw the bums out in 2 years. All right, let's go over to this direction. Yes, sir.
Thank you. There's been the have and have-nots, as the old saying goes. I mean, here in the state of Washington, long-term unemployment is now 2.5 times what it was in the pre-Great Recession. In our neighbor, Oregon, 20% of the population is on food stamps. So there's a big, big change going on in our economy. What do you anticipate? Do you see that gap narrowing, or are we going to keep going this direction, would you say?
Well, I go back to that old theorem that if you try the same thing, you're going to get the same result. And so something needs to change. And what's happening now is the structural problems in the federal budget, not changing how we tax in order to be more pro-growth tax, and not even talking tax cuts, but the way that you tax influences how people invest and save. And the way you spend also influences economic growth. And so unless those structural things are addressed, we're going to get more of the same going off to the future. And so that's why if we're going to turn things around, we have an opportunity now with a different party in charge. Basically, the Republicans have control of both the Senate and the House. You have a chance for different policies to come forward, which will possibly change the result. But if you don't change the policies, you're going to end up with more of the same. Let's go over here.
Why is OPEC dropping the price of oil, and how is that going to affect our economy?
Yes, so OPEC's dropping the price of oil for good reasons and bad reasons. One is it's competitive. One of the things that you're getting now is with ISIS. ISIS is one of the, they control the oil fields in Iraq and a little bit in Syria, and they need to raise money, so they're selling oil at 35 bucks a barrel. And people are buying that up like crazy, and so if you stick your oil at $100 a barrel, there are countries in Africa and the other Middle East and Eastern Europe, et cetera, that don't want to pay that high price and they're buying that low, and so OPEC's lowering their price to be more competitive. The other problem, though, is you're getting a global slowdown, and when you get a global slowdown, you get an oversupply of oil. People don't need as much oil to drive in cars and to power plants and manufacturing, et cetera. And so the other thing that you're seeing now on the oil is there's less demand for it. And when your supply is here and demand goes down here, the prices then drop. And so you're seeing those two factors come together to produce lower prices of oil. Yes?
I've been watching the economy now for many years, and I've always wondered why the federal government doesn't see what the hell is going on with unemployment. There are so many jobs out there that need to be done, and people are sitting on their backsides collecting welfare, collecting unemployment checks, so forth and so on from the government, and nothing's being done, i.e. CCC. Let's start it up again. Let's get public works going again and get the infrastructure this country built. The grid system that this country has is almost less than third world. What's going on? Why aren't we putting money into these things? We are putting dollars into it, but not nearly enough. I think what they ought to do is they ought to take the people all on welfare and are taking unemployment and make them serve 2 years, similar to a Peace Corps, put them on public service, and get these things finished. It'll put people back to work and boost the economy. I know it's going to take a lot of dollars to implement, but let's do it.
Yeah. So it's a really interesting point that you bring up, and I know there's a lot of frustration out there about this, and the key to a solution to that is a political one. It's Congress and the President working together to come up with policies that improve the economy. And what you have over the course of time, and you saw this under George Bush as well as now under Obama, is a more strident and more partisan atmosphere where it's an all or nothing. And there's very little middle out there. And I'm not a middle kind of guy, but I also realize that you need a middle to be able to work and get things done. And friends of mine like Bob Michael, who was the House Minority Leader, he was a gentleman from Illinois, was one of those people. And they don't exist in great numbers in Congress anymore. And so when Congress and the President can't have a dialogue, then everything stops, because you need a law or you need executive authority to make that happen, and there's not the willpower right now. And so that's why this gridlock needs to stop, and that's why I think you had so much turnover of incumbents last night.
Ed, as a guy who knows a thing or two about money, tell me what you think about Bitcoin. Novelty or game changer?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. Overall, I think the notions behind Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general are going to be really important in currency's future. Whether it's Bitcoin or Bitcoin 2.0 or something we haven't even thought of yet 5 years from now, that's the direction that currencies are moving in. And so let me give you quick 3 points about that. Number one is, when you take a look at the evolution of currency, this is the natural evolution. When you take a look at the physical currency itself, it used to be commodity-based, right? You didn't have bills. It was precious metal coins that were used as money. Then it became commodity exchange, where you had a gold certificate or a silver certificate. The certificate wasn't worth anything other than it meant that at some bank you could trade it in for an ounce of silver, and that's why it was worth something, because it represented something that was in a bank that you could trade it for. So that was a commodity exchange standard. Then in 1933, as I explained, to 1973 or so, when Nixon took us completely off the gold exchange standard, we went to pure fiat currency. So there's nothing backing our currency except for the full faith and credit of the United States of America. So when we borrow money, our creditors expect us to pay them first before paying out Medicare benefits or NIH grants or any of that other stuff. We owe our creditors first. And as long as our creditors are sure that they're going to get paid back sometime, that money is worth something. So that's fiat currency. Nothing backing it up except a promise. Then you get to digital currency, which basically there's electronic currency is a dollar that you put into a bank, and then they create an electronic dollar that goes into your savings account. The electronic is the electronic representation of the physical asset. Digital currency just exists in cyberspace. It was created not to have any physical representation, but to be purely currency that exists on the internet. And with that comes greater, so in order for that to work, it has to be more secure, and so they use the most advanced cryptography, encryption for it, that makes it virtually unbreakable. And because it uses the internet, it has the disruptive potential that Skype had for phone calls. So instead of right now, think of it this way. You're in Bangladesh and you're an entrepreneur and you want to go out and start a baking business and you want to buy a book on it. You got two problems. One is there's no Barnes & Noble in that little village in Bangladesh. And number two is there's no local branch bank. You have to go to Bombay or whatever major city, travel 3 hours on a bus in order to go to the bank to take money in and out. With Bitcoin, it's a peer-to-peer transaction. So you basically have electronic money on your phone, and you can go to Amazon, buy your book, transfer the money over the internet from your phone to Amazon, and tell them where to send it. Whereas in the old way, you could buy it from Amazon, but you need a credit card. But in order to have a credit card, you need to have a bank account. And in order to have a bank account, you have to show that you have X amount of money that you can put in. And when you get a credit card statement, how do you pay for that if you don't have a bank account? We write checks for it. So for 2.5 billion people in the world, they don't have access to the banking system. And overnight, whether it's Bitcoin or something else that uses these same principles, that will bring 2.5 billion people into the banking system and revolutionize economic growth in the world. That's the type of disruptive technology. But right now, it's basically an idea, and it's a risky idea, but there are the principles and the technology that enable this to happen are going to live on long beyond where Bitcoin will live.
Sir, do you believe such as J.P. Morgan Chase, the banks, they seem to be larger now than before 2008. Should they be broken up?
Yeah. So that's a really great question. And being a free market person, I would say that the economy would be better off by not having too big to fail. The question is, what's the best way of doing that? And right now, we've had basically 6 years of aggressive regulation, and they've just gotten bigger. And so I think it's time for more competition to those banks. And being a total free market, and I'm just letting you know this not because I'm right, but it's because I want you to know what my philosophical base is so you can interpret my comments. I'm a total free market person, and I believe that what we have with these big banks is crony capitalism versus true free market capitalism. We have these banks that are so big that they depend on the government through laws and regulation to protect their market share. And if those were taken away and allowed other banks and other alternative financial institutions to begin competing with them, that's going to help. I also think a big change is going to happen over the next 25 years, and this gets into my experience with currency. I think this whole notion of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, elements of those are going to have a greater impact on financial systems that are going to encourage more competition. Yes. Now, being bipartisan, we're going to go to the left side of the room over here.
You've talked about some broad and very significant issues today, but with your experience at the Mint, I wonder if you would entertain a trivial question.
Sure.
When will we stop minting pennies?
You know, that's a great question. That's probably one of the top 5 questions I get, besides, can you get me a tour at the Mint when my family's in town, and other things. So what do we do about the penny? The short answer to that question is the only way you can get rid of the penny, there's 2 ways. The legal way, which is Congress has to pass a law because the Constitution gives Congress the ability to determine our denominations. And so Congress has to say, we don't want the penny anymore. Congress can't even pass a budget, let alone get around to working out whether or not they should get rid of the penny. So as a result, when I was Mint director, I went to Congress and said, let the Mint make that decision. And they said, absolutely not, we don't want to give up our authority. And I said, well, then why don't you use your authority? And he said, well, I'll tell you what, we'll work out a compromise. You tell us what the cheaper way of making pennies are. And then we'll vote on it. So that proposal's been up there, and we'll see where it goes. Second way you get rid of the penny is through natural disuse. When people don't want to use pennies, pennies don't wear out as quickly, and they stay in the system longer, and our orders start going down. And when people stop using pennies completely because they're giving them away to charities and stuff like that, then we don't have to make any more pennies. So when you look at the half penny, the half dime, the 3-cent piece, the 2-cent piece, all those coins, they disappeared through natural causes instead of Congress actually taking action to get rid of it. Now, the other part of your question that you didn't ask, but is normally a follow-up, is the reason why this is important is penny costs today about 2 cents to make. And the way the Fed makes money on this, the way that the Mint makes money on it, is that our agreement with the Federal Reserve is the Federal Reserve pays us face value for those coins. And if we can make the coins for under face value, we get to keep that as a profit. And if we make the coins for above face value, we take a loss. On a penny, if we make a penny for 2 cents and they give us a penny for it, we lose a penny for every penny that we make. And when you make 6 billion pennies, you lose $60 million on it. At the same time, on a quarter, it costs the Mint 10 cents to make a quarter. The Fed pays us 25 cents. It's 25 cents worth, so you make 15 cents. And then when you make 3 billion quarters, that's $450 million of profit. You can sustain a $60 million loss. Now, as a business person, I would rather have gains in my quarters and gains in my penny, but that's just the way that our political system works right now. Long answer to your short question, but I hope I got it. All right, let's go back to the right side over here. Yes, sir.
Yes, you answered half of the question because that gentleman asked the question about the banks, why they are allowed to be so big that they cannot fail. So you already said something on that. But my next question is, in your conclusion remarks, you said it may take 5 years, 10 years, or 30 years for fundamentals to come back. But 30 years for most of us sitting here are a little too long to wait for.
Yeah. So you're not factoring in the advances of biotechnology and our ability to live longer these days. There's a great fear that if structural changes are not made, this could be the new normal for quite a while. And the example is Japan. And structural changes that I'm talking about now are, when you take a look at the federal budget, for example, almost 55% of the federal budget is entitlement spending. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and other forms of financial assistance. And all those have guaranteed increases going off to the future. You just can't keep that up. And if you keep that up, as more people age in, as more of the baby boomers age in, at that rate, that's going to dominate the budget. And that's what happened in Japan. Japan has a similar problem to us, but it happened to them 20 years ago. And now they're suffering because their birth rates have gone down. You need 2.3 people born for every family in order to replace the people who are passing on. In Japan, it's like 1.1 or something like that. And so they don't have enough people coming behind. And they have a lot of people aging in, getting a lot of benefits, and the people paying taxes behind, those taxes aren't even close to paying for all the benefits. So you can't keep that cycle up. And so the key to changing that future are structural changes, both on how the market works, but both on how the government spends and taxes. And without that, this could be a possibility for the foreseeable future. Japan's the perfect predecessor forecast for that. But I'm hopeful that our country's going to wake up, and already you've seen a lot of dissatisfaction over the current political process as a result of the elections that were held yesterday, that there's been a change there, and that is less pro-Republican, it's more really frustrated with how things are going. And we hope that if we make a change in the leadership, that's going to result in a change in the result, because not changing the leadership hasn't changed the result for 6 years. And so something needs to change there. And so really there's a lot of pressure on the new GOP leadership to deliver and to figure out ways that they can compromise, as well as the president has to figure out ways they can compromise. And there's certainly things that both parties can agree to, and instead of negotiating a grand package on all your disagreements, they should at least get some things done across the board on mutual things that there's no controversies over. All right, let's go back over here.
As a follow-up to the penny question, what happened to the 50-cent piece?
You know, the 50-cent piece is still there. So we make it for circulation, but no one demands it. So banks don't ask for it, except some banks might have a couple rolls on hand because parents like to come in for a birthday gift for their kids and stuff like that. But it's not really used in daily circulation anymore. And really, we actually sell more at the Mint collector's 50-cent pieces, which are the same 50-cent piece, but made with a proof finish, which is polished up and then triple stamped to make sure you got a great design, clear design on it. The collector's versions of those 50 pieces outsell the ones that we sell to banks for daily circulation. So the 50-cent piece is unlikely to come back. The dollar coin is another thing that, by the way, is a great profit maker, because for every dollar coin that the Mint makes, it costs us 20 cents to make, and the Fed pays us $1 for it, so I make 80-cent profit. And when I was there, I made $1 billion a year, so that's $800 million of profit. That's an easy way to get over $1 billion in profit. Also, we've seen a small revitalization in $2 bills, and I won't say this in public, so if you're taping this, don't play it on C-SPAN or anything, but strip clubs are actually buying a lot of $2 bills because the patrons give out $1 bills as tips. I don't think some of the performers like that cheapness, so by doing $2 bills, you're getting double of what they normally get. We'll go on this side.
First of all, thank you for addressing us.
Sure, my pleasure.
I was going to ask about Glass-Steagall, but I've changed my question. Do I understand you to say, as regards Social Security, that you disagree with Senator Bernie Sanders, who points out that if we raise the cap to over $100,000 on paying Social Security taxes, that we will not be in trouble? We should not behave as though we are going to run out of our entitlement, which we paid into, just because we don't have the political will to raise the amount of money that you pay Social Security taxes on. So I'm just curious about how you feel about Senator Sanders' position.
Yes, that's a great question, and let me first provide the broad picture and then the specific answer. The broad picture is there's a lot of different ways you can reform entitlements. None of them are pleasant, and all of them require strong political will. To means test, as you said, or cut benefits, or change the age eligibility, all those are options that should be on the table and discussed as American people through your elected representatives, and some mutual agreement ought to come out of that on how to tackle this for the country. So even as a conservative Republican who is a free market person, I believe that all options ought to be on the table and the country ought to decide. So that's where I am. Second, on Senator Sanders' specific proposal, cutting off Social Security for anyone with over $100,000 in net worth. So here's my point. That can help, but it won't take care of the Social Security problem, because I'll tell you right now, if you take a look at the deficit here, which is, we took in roughly $3 trillion of taxes last year, which is the record year for the federal government. They've never taken in more money than that. And yet, we went in the hole by $500 billion, because we spent $500 billion more than we had for the things that we're paying for today. If you take a look at Social Security, if Social Security had all the money that it needed to pay out all the benefits for all the people who are going to age into it, they are short $125 trillion. How far away? That $100,000, getting income from that is not going to make up for $125 trillion. There has to be a bigger solution to that problem. Thank you very much. It's such a pleasure.